Let's get a divorce." Sitting in the living room, my pregnancy at full term, I couldn't fully comprehend those words coming out of my husband's mouth. The man who at the altar had sworn to love me for life was asking me for a divorce with a face of absolute shamelessness. In that instant, betrayed by the person I trusted most, my whole world came crashing down. However, Emily smiled as she signed the divorce papers. What they didn't know then was that this hellish moment would be the true beginning that would completely change Emily's life. My name is Emily, and I am 34 years old. Until 3 years ago, I worked as a manager at a coffee shop for a well-known franchise. It was there that I met my husband, James. The early days of our marriage were truly happy. On weekends, we would walk hand in hand through our Philadelphia neighborhood. We laughed at any silly thing, and when we entered a coffee shop, we marveled to discover that we both wanted to order the exact same thing. Back then, I never doubted for a second that he would be my unconditional support for life. But when did everything start to change? James began coming home later and later from work. At first, I thought he was just very busy. However, even when he was home, our conversations dwindled. We used to sit together on the couch, watching TV and chatting about everything, but lately, we each just stared at our own phones. As my belly grew, so did the distance between us. More and more nights, though we shared a bed, we slept with our backs to each other. Sometimes, half asleep, I would reach out to his side of the bed and find it already cold. When I heard his stealthy footsteps heading to the living room in the early morning, I would pretend to be asleep while clutching the sheets tightly. It was then that I first discovered you could feel an immense loneliness while living under the same roof as another person. Now, 8 months pregnant, the weight of my belly made my back feel like it was breaking, and my legs were so swollen that the marks from my socks stayed etched into my skin. Lately, the ones who took care of me most in my condition were not my husband, but my parents. Today, once again, my parents came to the house with their hands full of Tupperware containers for their only daughter. "Dad, why do you bring so many things?" "Your mother spent the whole day at the market and cooking for you," my father said. "Even if you don't have much of an appetite, eat well." "That's right," my mother added as she put the food in the fridge. "I've made you a good beef stew, which I know you love, and also some homemade meatloaf for James. Eat together when he gets home from work." That night, tired of waiting for James, Emily heated up and ate the stew her mother had brought, all alone. The warm broth comforted her body and soul, making her feel the immense love of her parents. Sitting alone at the dining table late at night, tears began to well up in her eyes. She didn't know if she was crying from gratitude for her parents' unconditional love or from the disappointment of a husband who, once again, was not coming home. Before, James used to come straight home after work. The sound of the front door opening would make me smile without realizing it, but lately, everything was different. Almost daily, I would receive a text from him saying he had to work overtime on a team project. The nights he spent out, which used to be 1 a week, were now 3 or 4. One day, when he came home late, I cautiously asked, "Have you had dinner? Where did you sleep last night?" James loosened his tie and sighed. "Stop nagging, please. I'm exhausted." I went to the kitchen, got a glass of water, and just stood there for a long time. I could only feel my fingertips growing cold, but there were more strange things. His phone, which he used to leave lying on the couch, he now took with him even to the bathroom. One night, while he was showering, I tried to look at his phone, but the passcode had been changed. "Why did you change the passcode?" "We had a security training at the company. They told us to change it periodically. But why are you looking at my phone?" he asked, irritated. While sorting the laundry, I found expensive lingerie that I didn't recognize. In the bathroom, there was also a bottle of unfamiliar perfume, a sweet and intense scent. Suddenly, I saw my reflection in the mirror. My face, swollen from pregnancy, my lifeless hair. Was James dressing up more because he was disgusted with my current appearance? I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I held them back. One night, sitting alone on the sofa in the empty living room, watching TV without seeing it, a notification from Instagram made my phone buzz. Sarah, my high school classmate and friend of 20 years, had just posted a photo. It was an image of two intertwined hands, one of a man and one of a woman, with matching rings. Only the hands were visible, so you couldn't tell who he was. Last year she had a tough time after breaking up with her boyfriend, but it seemed she had met someone new. I called her. "Sarah, do you have a new boyfriend?" "Yes, I've met someone wonderful. I think we'll get married soon." "Wow, congratulations. We have to get together so you can tell me all about it and introduce me." "Of course, we'll see. See you soon." "Hey Emily, I'm a little busy right now. I'll call you later, okay?" And she hung up. Although it was a brief conversation, I was happy that Sarah was happy again. However, it seemed a bit strange that she, being so talkative, hung up in such a hurry. I had a strange feeling, but I quickly dismissed it. The next day, coming back from the grocery store, I found a credit card statement in the mailbox. $900 at a high-end maternity boutique and $2,500 at a luxury department store. When had I bought that? It wasn't like me to spend like that. The sum exceeded $3,000 in a single month. Maternity clothes, I read. What if James was preparing a surprise for me? Perhaps he felt guilty for coming home late lately and for being so distant, and he had bought me a gift. The disappointment I felt transformed into a small spark of hope. I felt the baby kick in my belly and, stroking my stomach, I whispered, "It seems Daddy has a gift for us." Excited, I called James. "Honey, will you be home soon? We could go out for a nice dinner tonight. I have to work late tonight. I don't know what time I'll be done." "Don't wait up for me. Just go to bed." As night fell on the empty house, anxiety took hold of me again. Lying alone in bed, with the other side empty, I stroked my belly and told myself, "Dad is just very busy right now. That's all. When our baby is born, he'll surely change." Clinging to that idea, I fell asleep. A few days later, while taking out the trash in the morning, I opened the mailbox. Usually, it was just junk mail, but that day I found a thick envelope. On the front, in bold letters, "Default notice, demand for payment." My heart skipped a beat. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a detailed list: loan date, amount, interest rate, outstanding balance. The loan amount was $350,000. He was 3 months behind on the interest payments, and if the debt was not settled as soon as possible, legal action would be initiated. In that instant, I felt my legs give way. $350,000. When had we ever needed that much money? My head was a mess. I went back inside. I spread the documents out on the dining room table and called James. As expected, he didn't answer. A little later, I received a text from him. "I'm in a meeting, can't talk. I'm working late tonight too, so go to bed." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. $350,000. The interest alone would be several $1,000s a month. On James's salary, it was impossible to cover that amount. The next day, my mother came over with more food. As soon as she saw my face, she frowned. "Emily, honey, what's wrong with your face? You didn't sleep at all last night." I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the loan. It's just that I haven't had much energy lately. Since I got pregnant, I have trouble sleeping. After my mother left, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for a long time. I felt pathetic for not being able to tell her and keeping it all to myself. Just then, I received a message from James, which was unusual. "I'll be home early today. I have something important to tell you. It must be about the $350,000 loan." Emily spent the rest of the day waiting for James with her heart in her throat. After 7 p.m., the front door opened. Hearing my husband come in, I got up from the sofa and went to the entryway. But it wasn't just one set of footsteps, it was two. Behind James was Sarah. My lifelong friend Sarah had come in with him. She was heavily made up and wearing an elegant dress. "Sarah? What a surprise. What are you doing here without calling?" Surprised, I greeted her amicably, but she just smiled without saying anything. "Honey, how come you two are together?" I asked my husband with a forced smile. I thought they must have run into each other by chance, but their expressions were strange. It was then that I noticed Sarah's belly under her dress was bulging. My husband avoided my gaze, and Sarah had an enigmatic expression. "Sarah, please, have a seat. James said in a low voice. Confused, I sat down on the sofa. James and Sarah sat down together across from me. In the living room of my own home, my husband sitting next to my best friend. The scene seemed incredibly strange. Emily, I'm going to be honest with you, James said in a grave voice. I thought he was going to talk about the loan, but what came out of his mouth was something completely different. I'm in love with Sarah. We're getting a divorce. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. That he loved Sarah, my friend of 20 years. I looked back and forth between James and Sarah. They weren't joking. What did you just say? Sarah said, pronouncing my name cautiously. The friend I had known for 20 years, the one who had been my maid of honor at my wedding, gently stroked her belly and continued. I'm 5 months pregnant. The baby is James's. My mind went blank. I did the math. 5 months ago was when I was in my first trimester, suffering from morning sickness, hugging the toilet. In that time when my husband didn't even pat my back to comfort me, the two of them were already together. This has to be a dream, a nightmare. It can't be real, I thought. I love James, Sarah continued, taking my husband's hand. I clasped my trembling hands together as I tried to process the situation. Emily, you have your parents, you have your family. I only have him. I have no one else to lean on. So, you intend to take my husband from me? You, my friend of 20 years? I asked with a trembling voice. I expected to cry, but strangely, my eyes were dry. James and I are getting married. Please, sort out the papers before the baby is born. Sarah looked at James and gave him a nod. He then took an envelope from his briefcase. It was the divorce papers. He placed them on the table and said, You just have to sign. You can keep the condo. That will be enough compensation. My husband, offering me the house as if he were doing me a favor. My friend, brazenly announcing she was going to marry my husband. The two people I had trusted most in my life were demanding a divorce with insulting arrogance. The betrayal from both of them made my blood run cold. I felt a fire burning inside me, but paradoxically, my mind was becoming increasingly clear. That night, after they left, I sat on the living room sofa for a long time. The baby moved in my womb. Stroking my belly, I whispered, What a fool Mom has been, waiting for a surprise. I'm sorry, my little one. 20 years. That was how long Sarah and I had been friends. We met in 7th grade. We shared our lunches during recess. We cried together on graduation day. As adults, we always congratulated each other on our birthdays. We gave each other advice on our relationships. When one of us broke up with a boyfriend, we cried together over drinks. It was Sarah who was by my side, helping with everything on my wedding day. And that same Sarah had betrayed me with my husband and gotten pregnant. And James, the man who had confessed his love for me and asked me to marry him, promising to love me forever, now told me with complete nonchalance that he was in love with my best friend and that we should get a divorce. Thousands of thoughts swirled in my head in the face of such an unbelievable reality. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my mother. Emily, is James home yet? Have you two had dinner? Hearing my mother's voice, tears welled up again, but I couldn't worry her, so I swallowed my sobs and replied, Yes, we've already eaten. What's wrong with your voice? Is something the matter? No, nothing. I'm just a little tired. After hanging up quickly, sadness overwhelmed me, and I broke down crying. How was I going to tell my mother about this situation? How could I tell her that her only daughter, about to give birth, was getting a divorce because of the betrayal of her husband and her best friend? How much my parents would suffer. The night wore on, but sleep was impossible. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the last few months played before my eyes like a movie. Remembering, I started connecting the dots. Sarah's frequent visits to our house at the beginning of her pregnancy, my husband's especially kind treatment of her, how Sarah had been avoiding me lately, saying she was very busy, and how during that same period my husband always came home late with the excuse of overtime. I especially remembered the beginning of her pregnancy when she came over often. Worried about my morning sickness, she visited frequently, always on weekends when James wasn't working. Since I could barely eat, she always brought a ton of food, but the mere smell made me gag, so I would lie in the bedroom or go to the bathroom. From there, I could hear James and Sarah eating and chatting cheerfully. At the time, I felt bad for not being able to join them, and their laughter and murmurs seemed like a gesture of kindness. Now I realized they were having dates in my own home. I picked up my phone and reread my WhatsApp conversations with Sarah. The messages from a few months ago now took on a new meaning. "I'm so swamped lately, I can't keep up. We'll catch up and talk later." Sarah had been avoiding me. And the photo she posted on Instagram a few days ago, the picture of intertwined hands with matching rings. Only the hands were visible, so I didn't know who he was. It was my husband's hand. When I asked her if she had a boyfriend, she replied, "I've met someone wonderful." And that wonderful someone was my husband. Suddenly, a wave of rage washed over me. It was a feeling much stronger than sadness. How could they have done this to me? To have an affair with your 20-year friend's husband, get pregnant, and on top of that, ask her to sign the papers so you can get married. Did your child need a father? And what about the child I'm carrying in my belly? My son, who will be born next month, does he not need a father? I clenched my teeth. I squeezed my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Sarah, how could you do this to me? The next morning, after a nearly sleepless night, Emily sat on the sofa again with swollen eyes and a pale face. She couldn't tell if yesterday had been a dream or reality, and she didn't know what to do from here. After a while of staring into space, she suddenly thought of her mother-in-law. Did she know her son intended to abandon his pregnant wife and their baby to marry his mistress? Did she know that James had taken out a $350,000 loan and was now receiving default notices? Emily went to her mother-in-law's house. She went with the hope that, upon learning her son wanted a divorce, she would intervene to stop it and perhaps help pay off the debt. As she got off the bus and walked down her mother-in-law's street, she noticed the landscape had changed. The front lawn was unkempt and overgrown, and the flower pots that adorned the porch steps were dry and dead. When the door opened and she saw her mother-in-law's face, a chill ran down her spine. Her hair was messy, and she had deep, dark circles under her eyes. Her mother-in-law, normally a cheerful, active woman who took such good care of herself, she looked 10 years younger, was now a completely different person in just a month. Her face had become gaunt, her eyes were sunken, and she looked like an old woman whose health was a cause for concern. "Mom, it's me, Emily. You came?" Her mother-in-law's voice sounded nervous. Entering the dark house, she felt a chilly atmosphere. The living room, usually immaculate, was cluttered, and piles of papers were stacked on the dining table. "Mom, is something wrong?" At my question, my mother-in-law sighed deeply, sank onto the sofa, and with teary eyes and a trembling voice said, "The truth is, James told me he needed money, so I mortgaged this house and gave him $700,000. He said he would pay me back double when the stocks went up and asked me not to tell you anything. The first few months he paid me the interest, but now he doesn't pay it and he doesn't answer my calls. $700,000. I couldn't believe it. Mortgaging the house she had owned her whole life. My mother-in-law pulled another document from a drawer. The words "foreclosure proceedings" jumped out at me. I haven't paid the interest in 3 months. They're going to take my house soon. At my age, I'm going to be on the street. My mother-in-law's voice broke. $350,000 plus $700,000, $1,050,000. Infidelity wasn't enough. Now there was also a mountain of debt. Was this really the husband I knew? On the bus back home, I looked out the window. It was sunset. The orange-tinted sky, which I usually found beautiful, looked desolate today. I caressed my belly and thought to myself, a total of $1,050,000 in debt. A mother-in-law about to be homeless. My husband's infidelity and my friend Sarah's betrayal. Everything was tangled like a ball of yarn. Unraveling that knot seemed like an impossible task. When I got home, I sat on the sofa in the empty living room and was lost in thought for a long time. The sound of my phone startled me. It was James. "Have you signed them yet? Don't drag this out. Let's just get it over with." "I was with your mother." "So what?" "She's worried because they're going to foreclose on her house." "What did you spend the $700,000 on that you got from mortgaging her house?" On top of that, a notice for a $350,000 loan arrived at the house. "What the hell are you doing?" On the other end of the line, James said nothing. "Does Sarah know all this and still want to marry you? That's not your business anymore. You just sign the papers and that's it." James hung up abruptly. I stared at the divorce papers he had left on the table. Should I endure this for the sake of my son who was about to be born, or should I sign for my own good and the good of my baby? Thoughts crowded my mind, but the answer seemed clear. A mother-in-law with no money and about to be homeless who would want to live with me. A husband with over $1 million in debt and involved with my best friend. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that divorce was the only way to protect my son and me. Yes, I will get a divorce. And I will make sure to pay them back for all the pain they have caused me. The day after deciding to divorce, I went to the free legal aid service at the local community center. I had to make 2 bus transfers with my full-term pregnant body. I took a number and waited for my turn, sitting in an uncomfortable chair. "In a divorce, how can I receive child support and custody?" I asked as soon as I sat down across from the advisor. My voice was trembling. Child support is determined based on the other party's income. As for custody, it is usually granted to the person who is directly responsible for the child's care. I took detailed notes in my notebook. My husband had offered me the condo, but it wasn't enough. To survive with my son, I needed to get more. Back home, I opened the notebook and organized the additional conditions I was going to demand. The transfer of the condo's ownership to my name permanently, a monthly payment for child support, and the complete renunciation of parental rights. The hand holding the pen trembled, but I wrote each word clearly. A few days later, I met James at a nearby coffee shop. Sitting across from him after so long felt strange. His face, which I once loved, now looked like a stranger's. "What do you want?" "I already told you that you're getting the condo." "What more are you asking for?" he asked indifferently. I placed the paper I had prepared on the table. "I appreciate the condo, but it's not enough. I want $1,500 a month in child support and for you to completely renounce all parental rights. I don't want you to contact him." "Child support too? Don't you see how much debt I'm in?" "You're the one who created those debts." "The child is not to blame for anything," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. James hesitated for a moment and then sighed. "Fine. Sarah has money, so when we get married, we'll clear the debts and I'll pay you the support." I smiled inwardly. He didn't know that Sarah was drowning in debt, but I said nothing. That night, I received a call from my mother-in-law. "Emily, dear, he is your child's father after all. Do you really have to demand support and the renunciation of parental rights? James is going through a very hard time." My mother-in-law's voice was tearful. "Mom, I am also a mother trying to protect her child. I cannot allow him to inherit a mountain of debt, but he's my son." "Yes, Mom, he's your son. But he's no longer my husband or my child's father. I am just protecting the child who is about to be born." I spoke firmly and hung up. The day to sign the divorce papers arrived. James came to the house to pick up his last things, packed clothes and shoes into a suitcase, and stopped at the entrance. "I've done everything you wanted, so live well, and don't you dare show up later with the child saying he's my blood or anything like that." I couldn't believe it. What right did he have to talk to me like that? I didn't answer and closed the door. Only when his footsteps faded could I let out my breath. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office alone, submitted the divorce petition, and stamped my signature. As the clerk reviewed the documents, I looked out the window. The sky was clear. Strangely, I didn't cry. Leaving the building, a sign caught my eye. "Family records. Now my family is just my baby and me," I thought. I felt a lump in my throat. That night, I sat alone at the empty dining table, the place where we used to have dinner together. I took out the food my mother had prepared for me and started to eat. My hand trembled as I held the silverware. While washing the dishes, I saw my wedding ring. I took it off and stored it in the back of a drawer. I didn't need it anymore. I lay down in bed and caressed my belly. The baby moved. Now we're really starting over. Just you and me. I felt free and empty at the same time, but one thing was certain. I would not look back. So, after 3 years of marriage, I was alone again. Or rather, There were two of us, counting the baby I was carrying inside. 2 weeks passed since I filed for divorce. One early morning, I woke up with a contracting sensation in my belly. At first, I didn't think much of it. I had heard that Braxton Hicks contractions were common at the end of pregnancy. I tried to go back to sleep, but the pain intensified. I could feel it coming at regular intervals. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. Gritting my teeth, I got out of bed. I went to the living room, holding my belly. At that moment, I felt a warm liquid running down my legs. My water had broken. My heart was pounding. It's time to meet my baby, I thought. I was scared and excited in equal measure. With trembling hands, I called my mother. "Mom, I think I'm in labor." My water broke. "What?" "I'm on my way right now. I'll wake your father and we'll come." "Leave the door unlocked. Don't move around too much. Sit down and wait for us." After hanging up, I grabbed the hospital bag I had already prepared. I had packed it just in case, with underwear, towels, pads, clothes for the baby, my ID. Thank goodness I had thought of everything. As I opened the front door to leave, another contraction hit me. It was so painful I had to grab the railing to keep from falling. Cold sweat ran down my forehead. The interval between contractions was getting shorter and shorter. About 20 minutes later, my father's car pulled up to the building. My mother ran out and helped support me. My father, as he opened the car door for me, kept asking if I was okay. You could tell they had woken up in a hurry, because he was wearing his pajama pants under his coat. "It's okay, Emily. Does it hurt a lot?" "Yes, Mom. Let's go quickly. The contractions are getting closer together." The drive to the hospital felt endless. A trip that normally took half an hour seemed like an eternity. Every time a contraction came, I gripped the door handle tightly. My nails dug into the palm of my hand. My father nervously tapped the steering wheel at every red light. "Dad, it's okay. We can go slower." "No way. We have to get there fast. My girl is in pain." My father's voice trembled. I had never seen him so nervous. When we arrived at the hospital, they put me in a wheelchair and took me straight to the delivery room. The doctor examined me and nodded. "The cervix is very dilated, about 8 centimeters. You'll be able to give birth soon. You've got this." The pain was getting more and more intense. I felt like my whole body was being torn apart. I thought my back was going to break. I never imagined such pain could exist. My mother held my hand tightly. Hers was also soaked in sweat. "Come on, Emily, a little more. You're doing great. I went through this too to have you." "Mom, it hurts so much." "I know, sweetie, but hang in there a little longer. The baby is coming out." I don't know how many hours passed. I completely lost track of time. I pushed, breathed, and pushed again without a break. Every time the delivery nurse said, "You're doing great." "A little more?" I pushed with all my might. I felt like I was running out of energy. Suddenly, I heard a baby's cry, the most beautiful sound in the world. In that instant, all the pain seemed to disappear. "Congratulations, it's a healthy boy. He weighs 7 pounds. The nurse placed the baby on my chest. His small, rosy face, his wrinkled skin, closed eyes, tiny nose and lips. It was the most beautiful face in the world. Tears started streaming down my cheeks. I couldn't stop. I endured these 9 months to meet him, I thought. "Lucas, I'm Mommy. We finally meet. You did so well, my little one." The baby stirred on my chest. His little hand waved in the air and then latched onto my finger tightly. Each of his fingers was so small and perfect. He even had nails. To think that this little life had grown inside me. In that moment, everything else faded away. The betrayal, the anger, the loneliness, the fear. Only my son existed. My mother, while wiping the sweat from my forehead, cried with me. "You did so well, my daughter. The baby looks like his mom. He's very handsome. He has a perfect nose, just like you as a baby. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for being here. I don't know what I would have done without you." Of course, I had to be here. My daughter was giving birth. My father, on the other side of the glass, kept wiping his tears as he looked at the baby. I had never seen my father cry like that, always so serious. Later, they told me he had paced in front of the delivery room for 2 hours. Once in the room, I couldn't stop looking at Lucas. They had brought him from the nursery, and he was sleeping peacefully beside me. His little lips moved, making a tiny noise. It seemed like he was hungry. I brought the bottle to him, and he began to suck vigorously. The scene was so adorable that I cried again. "You're such a good eater, my Lucas. Eat a lot to grow up big and strong." When I was discharged, my parents took me home. My mother carried the baby in her arms, my father carried the bags, and I walked slowly. I still hadn't fully recovered. The house that once felt empty was now different. The crib, the bottle sterilizer, the stacks of diapers. It was no longer the house that James had abandoned. It was Lucas's and my home. "Mom, can you stay with me for a few days?" "Of course, I'll stay here with you until you recover. I'll make you broth, do the laundry, and take care of Lucas so you can rest." Thanks to my mother, I was able to get through the first few days, but when she left, the real struggle began. The baby waking up all night, feedings every 2 or 3 hours, endless diaper changes. I got no sleep. At 4 inches the morning, pacing the living room with a crying baby in my arms, tears would escape. I felt exhausted. My eyes were bloodshot. I hadn't washed my hair in days, and barely ate. I didn't even dare to look at myself in the mirror. Can I raise this child on my own? It's too hard, I thought. In those moments, I would look at Lucas. The baby, exhausted from crying, would fall asleep in my arms, oblivious to everything. Seeing his peaceful face gave me new strength. Yes, I can do this. For this child, I am capable of anything. When Lucas ate well and slept soundly, a smile would appear on my face. For the future of this child, I felt I could handle anything. A month after giving birth, my mother came to the house. While she was making me some broth, she asked cautiously, "Emily, what are you planning to do now? Have you thought about going back to work?" I looked at Lucas and answered, "Yes, Mom. I want to open a coffee shop again. I have the experience from when I was a manager." "A coffee shop, all by yourself? And what will you do with Lucas?" "I'll take him to daycare. I want to have my own business, even if it's small." My mother looked at me with concern. "It will be very tough. Juggling raising a child with a business is not easy. I'm very worried." "I know, Mom, but I want to try. I want to be a mother Lucas can be proud of. I want to live with dignity, without depending on anyone. Besides, I don't know how long I'll receive child support." My mother looked at me in silence for a while. Then she took my hand tightly. Her hand was warm. "Do what you want to do, my daughter. As it happens, the retail space on the ground floor of your father's building is becoming available next month. You can start your coffee shop there. Your mother and I will always be by your side. Don't worry about a thing," my father said. Faced with my parents' unconditional love, I couldn't hold back the tears. "Thank you, Mom. I love you both." That night, after putting Lucas to bed, I took out a notebook. I started writing the business plan for the coffee shop, the necessary budget, the menu design, the concept for the decor. I wrote it all down. I remembered everything I had learned working at the franchise. Selecting coffee beans, espresso extraction, latte art, inventory management, customer service, closing the register. The future, which had once seemed so dark, was beginning to take shape. There was still a long way to go, but at least I could see a direction. The moon was shining outside. It was a full moon. Lucas murmured something in his sleep. I sat by his crib and gently stroked his cheek. His skin was soft and smooth. "Lucas, Mommy is going to work very hard. We are going to be very happy, the two of us together. It's okay that Daddy isn't here. Mommy will play his part too." I thought I saw Lucas smile in his sleep. He was probably having a nice dream. For the first time since the divorce, I felt excited about the future. I was scared, but I also felt a great sense of excitement. A new beginning was waiting for me. The day of the official grand opening of Emily's coffee shop finally arrived. I woke up at 5 inches the morning. I was so nervous I couldn't go back to sleep. I got up and looked out the window. The sky was still dark, but my heart was pounding. At 7, I dropped Lucas off with my mother and headed to the shop. As I opened the door, I saw the clean and tidy interior I had left the day before. I had placed a small potted plant on each table, and on the counter, I had displayed the pastries I had baked that very morning. I warmed up the espresso machine and ground the coffee beans. A delicious aroma of coffee filled the space. At 9, my parents arrived with a bouquet of flowers. My father was holding a camera. "Emily, let's take a picture in front of the sign, for the memory." I straightened my apron and stood under the sign. My parents stood on either side of me. My father took a picture with his phone. In the picture, you could see the tension on my face, but I was still smiling. "Our daughter, finally a business owner," my mother said, patting me on the shoulder. I felt my eyes well up, but I held it together. I couldn't cry. Today was a new beginning. At 10 o'clock sharp, I opened the doors wide. When the first customer walked in, I gave a welcoming nod. "Welcome." My voice trembled. The first customer was the owner of the real estate office upstairs. "Oh, today is the grand opening. I'll have an Americano." With trembling hands, I prepared his coffee. I put the ground coffee in the portafilter, tamped it, and pressed the extraction button. The espresso dripped slowly. I added hot water and served him the Americano. "Enjoy." The real estate owner took a sip and nodded. Not bad. I'll be back often." With those simple words, I felt something grow inside me. At lunchtime, more customers started to arrive. A few nurses from the hospital upstairs came down, and also some teachers from a nearby academy. I was so busy taking orders and making coffee that before I knew it, it was already past 1 p.m. Just then, the door opened, and a man walked in. He was wearing a white coat. He seemed to be a doctor from the hospital upstairs. He was a man in his late 30s, tall and with a neat appearance. "An iced Americano, please." His voice was deep and calm. I took his order and prepared the coffee. The man took the coffee and left without another word. What a serious customer, I thought. That afternoon, when I closed the shop, I counted the cash register. For the first day, it hadn't been bad. 23 coffees and 5 slices of cake. It wasn't a spectacular number, but a good start is half the battle. The next day, and the day after, the doctor came down again at lunchtime. Always the same order, an iced Americano, and he always left without saying anything. I didn't know his name or his specialty. To me, he was just a somewhat stoic, regular customer. I had been open for a month when I received a call from Liz, a friend from high school. "Emily, I'm in the area for work and I heard you opened a coffee shop. Can I stop by?" I hadn't seen her in a long time. Liz was also friends with Sarah. Honestly, I hesitated a little. I knew the topic of Sarah would come up, but I couldn't avoid it. "Of course. Come on over." As soon as Liz entered the shop, she looked around in admiration. "It's beautiful. Did you decorate it yourself?" "Yes, with my parents' help." I made 2 lattes and we sat at a table. Liz took a sip and gave a thumbs up. "This is amazing. You can tell you worked at a franchise. You have a real talent." After a bit of chatting, Liz cautiously brought up the subject. "Hey, Emily, have you heard about James and Sarah?" My heart skipped a beat. I was expecting it, but I still got nervous. "No, what's going on?" "They're a mess. It's chaos." It turns out James lost all the money in the stock market, and it was discovered that Sarah was living by racking up credit and loans. All the designer bags and luxury hotels were paid for with debt. I took a silent sip of my coffee. Liz continued. "So now they spend all day fighting about money. James's salary is being garnished, and they say he's asking everyone for money." It was something I had imagined. I knew Sarah lived beyond her means. But still, hearing it, I felt a strange sensation. More than satisfaction, it was a feeling of emptiness. And to top it off, James's mother's house was eventually foreclosed on. My ex-mother-in-law's house, foreclosed. I set my cup down on the table. I remembered her face. The last time I saw her, she had aged so much. Now she was homeless. "It's a good thing you got away from him," Liz said, taking my hand. "If you had stayed with that man, he would have dragged you down with him." I forced a smile. After Liz left, I had dinner at my parents' house. I told them what she had said, and my mother clicked her tongue. "You see, in the end, everyone reaps what they sow." "Mom," I interrupted, putting down my fork. "Please, don't speak ill of her. I don't want Lucas to see me as a mother who criticizes his grandmother." My mother was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "You're right, honey. You've matured a lot. On the way home, I thought, whatever happens to my ex-husband or to Sarah, it's not my business anymore. I don't have time to rejoice in others' misfortunes, nor do I want to live like that. I have to follow my own path. As I entered the second month, the coffee shop began to establish itself. Someone had posted a review on a neighborhood moms forum, saying it was an ideal coffee shop to visit with children. After that, young mothers with their strollers started coming. Since I was also a mother, I understood their needs. I created a spacious area to park strollers and set up a changing station in the bathroom. I also made high chairs available. As customers felt comfortable and stayed longer, word of mouth began to work. I started to have regulars, a man who stopped by every morning before work, a grandmother who came in the afternoons to read, a young couple who visited on weekends. My small shop was gradually filling with the warmth of people, and the serious doctor continued to come down every day at lunchtime. An iced Americano, always the same order. I later found out his name was Dr. Evans, and he was the director of the internal medicine clinic upstairs. One afternoon, my mother brought Lucas to the shop. Lucas was particularly fussy and suddenly burst into tears. I touched his forehead, and it was burning. "Mom, I think Lucas has a fever." I was so scared I didn't know what to do. Just then, Dr. Evans came down for his coffee and saw the situation. "The child has a fever. If you'd like, I can take a look." It was the first time he had truly spoken to me. I nodded. "Doctor." Evans touched Lucas's forehead and neck and said, "It doesn't seem too high, but if you come up to the clinic, I can take his temperature properly." "Thank you so much, doctor." We went up to the clinic and he examined him. Luckily, it wasn't anything serious, just a mild cold. He prescribed a fever reducer, and we went back down. "Doctor, really, thank you so much. You're welcome." When a child gets sick, the mother is the one who worries the most. If his fever doesn't go down, don't hesitate to come back. Dr. Evans smiled for the first time. I, who had thought he was a serious and distant man, saw his expression completely change with his smile. From that day on, Dr. Evans would occasionally ask about Lucas. "Has the boy's fever gone down? Is he feeling better from his cold?" They were short phrases, but I could feel his concern. Juggling the coffee shop with raising Lucas was still a challenge. In the morning, I would drop Lucas at daycare and work non-stop until 7 p.m. Then I would close up, go pick up Lucas, give him dinner, and put him to bed. By then, it was already past 10 p.m. I slept little and was always tired. But when Lucas came home from daycare and ran into my arms, or when a customer told me the coffee was delicious, all the fatigue would vanish. One night, after putting Lucas to bed, I was sitting in the living room. I noticed the calendar. 3 months had passed since I opened the shop. "I can finally breathe a little," I said out loud. There was still a long way to go, but it was clear I was making progress. Sales were slowly increasing, and I had more and more regulars. The moon was shining outside. I gently stroked Lucas's sleeping cheek. "Lucas, Mommy is going to work very hard. We're going to stay this happy." A new routine had been established. Busy days, but happy ones. It was the morning of the day that marked exactly 1 year since my divorce. With a cup of coffee in hand, I looked at the calendar. Today's date, circled in red, caught my eye. I remembered the moment I signed the papers at the county clerk's office a year ago. Back then, I felt like my world was falling apart. But now, strangely, I felt light. Lucas, who was in the living room building a tower of blocks, knocked it down and burst into laughter. I smiled too. A year has changed me so much, I thought. At 9 a.m., I opened the shop and started the day as usual. I warmed up the espresso machine and ground coffee. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the shop and calmed me. At lunchtime, Dr. Evans came down. For a while now, he no longer just grabbed his coffee and left, but would stop to chat for a moment. "How did Lucas sleep today?" "Very well. He slept through the night," I replied as I served him his iced Americano. Dr. Evans nodded with a smile. His initial seriousness had disappeared, replaced by a warm expression. "I'm glad. When kids wake up a lot during the night, it's tough on the mothers." It was a short conversation, but I felt his concern and it made me feel good. "He's a good person," I thought to myself after he left. Around 2 p.m., I stepped outside for a moment to get some fresh air. Suddenly, I saw someone huddled by the planters at the entrance. I thought it was a homeless person and approached cautiously. As I got closer, I felt my heart stop. It was James. He had a scruffy beard and greasy, tangled hair. Instead of the impeccable suit he used to wear, he was wearing a wrinkled jacket. His face, once sharp, was so swollen he was barely recognizable. He looked at me with half-closed eyes, and his lips trembled. Emily. Hearing his voice, I took a step back. I felt my hands go numb. What are you doing here? James staggered to his feet and knelt before me. People passing by were staring at us. I felt my face burn. Get up. Everyone is watching us. Emily, please, listen to me. James's eyes were filled with tears. I couldn't believe this was the same man who, a year ago, had handed me the divorce papers with such arrogance. I crossed my arms and looked at him coldly. If you have something to say it quickly. I have to work. James lowered his head and began to speak with a broken voice. Sarah's son wasn't mine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What did you say? I'm type B and Sarah is type O, but the baby came out type A. The doctor at the hospital explained it to us. It was genetically impossible. James's shoulders were shaking. He was crying. It turns out Sarah had an ex-boyfriend. She got pregnant right before they broke up and pinned it on me. I couldn't say anything. My mind was a mess. I hadn't imagined Sarah was capable of going that far, but at the same time, strangely, I wasn't surprised. I already knew her true face. So what does that have to do with me? I asked coldly. James lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot. I fought with Sarah every day about the child, whether he was yours, whether he was mine. In the end, she left. We're in the middle of a divorce now. Also because of the debts. Debts. I lost everything in the stock market. My mother's house was foreclosed on too. I even started borrowing from loan sharks, and the interest rates skyrocketed. Credit card debts, loans. I have no one left to borrow from. James slammed his forehead against the ground. I heard the dull thud of his forehead against the concrete. Can't we start over? Lucas is my son. No. Give me one last chance. I bit my lip hard. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. I was furious. The man who, a year ago, had arrogantly asked for a divorce while holding Sarah's hand was now begging me for a last chance. At that moment, my mother came out of the shop. She was holding a bucket of water. She had seen everything. What are you doing here? How dare you show your face in front of my daughter? My mother said in an icy voice. James looked up. In that instant, my mother tilted the bucket. The cold water splashed over James's head. You have some nerve. Get out of my daughter's sight right now, my mother shouted. The customers inside the shop looked out in surprise. James, with his hair soaked and water dripping down his face, didn't move. His hunched body seemed even smaller. Mom, go inside. I'll handle this. I helped my mother back into the shop. Just then, Dr. Evans was arriving at the coffee shop and saw the scene. He looked back and forth between James, kneeling and soaked on the ground, and me, with a pale face. Emily, what's happening? Are you okay? He asked cautiously. I forced a nod. Yes, I'm fine. I'll be right in. Doctor. Evans entered the shop with a worried look on his face. I looked at James again. He looked from Dr. Evans to me, and his expression faltered. He seemed to have realized that we now lived in completely different worlds. Get up, I said calmly. James staggered to his feet. I looked him directly in the eyes. Lucas is not your son. When you left the house with your things, you said it yourself. That I should never come looking for you, talking about blood ties. James's face contorted. I gave birth to Lucas alone. I raised him alone, and I have protected him alone. He is my son, and he has nothing to do with you. My voice didn't tremble. It sounded surprisingly calm. And I have no intention of getting involved in your life again, so you don't get involved in ours. James opened his mouth to say something, but then closed it again. It seemed he had nothing left to say. He turned around with slumped shoulders. His figure, as he stumbled away down the alley, looked incredibly small. I watched him for a long time. Just a few years ago, that man was everything to me. I believed we would spend our whole lives together, but now I felt absolutely nothing. Not hate, not pity, nothing. I went into the shop and took a deep breath. My mother approached with a worried face. "Emily, are you okay?" "Yes, Mom. Now it's really over," I replied with a smile. I meant it. Dr. Evans was at the counter. He had been waiting for me. "Really? Are you okay? You look exhausted. You should close early today and go rest." "No, I'm really fine." I served him his coffee with a smile. "Doctor." Evans took the coffee but stayed there a while longer. "You're incredible." "What? You run this coffee shop by yourself? You're raising your son? And after a situation like that, you don't fall apart?" "I wouldn't have been able to." He said it with a sincerity that made me blush, and I lowered my head. "Well, you get used to it. I did it for Lucas." Dr. Evans nodded with a smile. Since there were no customers, I leaned against the counter and looked out the window. I saw the alley where James had disappeared. Strangely, I didn't cry. On the contrary, I felt a great relief in my chest. It was as if all the residual feelings that had lingered over the past year had been wiped away at once. That afternoon, I went to pick up Lucas from daycare. As soon as he saw me, he ran to me and threw his arms around me. He wrapped his little arms around my neck. "Mommy! My Lucas." I hugged him tightly and gave him a kiss on the cheek. I had been able to endure everything because of him. I had become stronger for him. On the way home, I carried him in my arms and walked slowly. The evening light colored the alley. Lucas looked up at me. "Mommy." That one word, "Mommy," had brought me back to life. Lucas smiled joyfully. I smiled back. In the years since the divorce, so much had happened. Difficult, lonely, and hopeless days. But in this moment, I was happy. In saying goodbye to James today, I felt like I had finally said goodbye to the past. I don't know what the future holds, but I know now that I'm not alone. I have Lucas, my parents, and my little coffee shop, and that is more than enough. I lay down in bed to put Lucas to sleep and whispered, "Lucas, we're going to stay this happy. Mommy will always protect you." Looking at Lucas's peacefully sleeping face, I closed my eyes. I felt that after a long time, I would be able to sleep in peace. Several months passed since James's visit. One afternoon, I received a call from my friend Liz. She said she would stop by the coffee shop for a moment. Liz took her coffee, sat across from me, and cautiously began to speak. "Emily, did you hear about James and Sarah?" I set my latte cup on the table and shook my head. "No. What happened?" "They finally divorced. But it wasn't a normal divorce. They've sued each other over money issues." Liz sighed and continued. "It seems Sarah took out a loan in James's name without him knowing. He has sued her to get it back, and she hasn't held back, asking for alimony. They say they see each other in court every month, and it's a huge mess." I said nothing. The warmth of the coffee cup felt pleasant in my hands. Sarah eventually went back to her parents' house, but even they don't trust her anymore. She has lied so much. And James is on every credit blacklist. He can't even get a credit card. Liz glanced at me and asked, "Are you okay? Does it not affect you to remember all that?" I shook my head. "No, I'm fine. That's their life now. I meant it. Before, I would have been overwhelmed by a mix of emotions, but now I was calm. Those were their lives, and they had nothing to do with me anymore." After Liz left, I stared out the window. It was getting dark. A year and a half ago, when I got divorced, my future was completely dark, but now here I was, in my own coffee shop, serving coffee. A few days later, news of my ex-mother-in-law also reached me. Someone mentioned that after her son's disaster, she had gone to live in a small town with distant relatives. She had lost her house in the foreclosure and was now living on borrowed time. For a moment, I remembered her face, so aged the last time I saw her. I felt a little sorry, but I didn't think about contacting her. Now, we each had to live our own lives. After a year and a half, the coffee shop was fully established. I had a group of seniors who came every morning, sat by the window, drank coffee, and chatted. "The coffee here is just right. The stuff from other places is too strong. I can't drink it," one of the grandmothers said. "That's true, and the owner is very kind. For someone so young, she's got a good head on her shoulders. The grandfather next to her nodded. I smiled and served them more coffee. These small moments filled my days. Lucas was also growing by leaps and bounds. It seems like only yesterday he took his first steps, and now he was running everywhere. He was also talking much more, forming complete sentences. One day, I brought him to the shop, and he climbed onto a stool at the counter to play. "Mommy, 1 coffee, please," he said, imitating a customer and holding out his hand. The customers in the shop started to laugh. "Wow, the little boss. How cute." I smiled too and placed an empty paper cup in front of him. "Here is your coffee, sir." Lucas took the cup, pretended to drink, and gave a thumbs up. "It's very good." Seeing him, I felt a great emotion. I was grateful just to see my son growing up healthy. My relationship with Dr. Evans also grew closer. One night, Lucas suddenly spiked a fever. It went over 102 degrees, and I was terrified. It was past 10 p.m., and I didn't know where to go. With trembling hands, I called him. I hesitated to bother him, but Lucas was so sick I had no other choice. "Doctor, I'm so sorry to bother you, but Lucas has a very high fever. What should I do?" "Come to the clinic right now. I'll be waiting for you." Despite the hour, Dr. Evans opened the clinic for us, examined Lucas, and prescribed a fever reducer. He put a cooling patch on his forehead and explained how to keep him hydrated. "If his fever doesn't come down during the night, call me without hesitation. I'll leave my phone on." Those words calmed my anxiety. I thanked him again and again. "Doctor, I really don't know how to thank you. Mothers of young children have it the toughest, and I know you're raising him alone, so call me whenever you need to." Back home, I spent a sleepless night watching over Lucas. Luckily, by dawn, his fever had broken. Seeing his sleeping face, I breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, when my mother came over, I told her about last night. Dr. Evans opened the clinic for us at that hour. He was so kind. My mother nodded. "That doctor seems like a trustworthy person, and Lucas is very fond of him. You don't find people like that these days. He seems like a good man," my father added. I blushed and looked down. One afternoon, I was cleaning up after closing. Dr. Evans came down. It looked like he had just finished his appointments. "Another tough day, huh?" "You too, doctor. Would you like a coffee?" I made him a hot latte and served it. He sat by the window. I sat across from him. For a while, we drank our coffee in silence. Outside, the streetlights were coming on. It was a quiet and peaceful moment. Dr. Evans was the first to speak. "Emily." "Yes?" "I've been watching you for a while, and I think you are a remarkable woman." I waved my hand dismissively. "Oh no. I just do what I can. Running a coffee shop, raising a son, taking care of your parents, it's not easy. And you're always smiling." Dr. Evans looked me in the eyes. His gaze was serious. "Would you be open to getting to know each other?" Slowly. My heart skipped a beat. I was not expecting those words. I set my cup down on the table and clasped my hands together. My fingers were trembling. Honestly, I was scared after what had happened. What if I got hurt again? What if I was betrayed again? Those thoughts crossed my mind. But at the same time, I remembered other images. Dr. Evans tending to Lucas in the middle of the night, his daily visits for coffee and to ask how we were, his silent support during difficult times. And I remembered how a few days ago, Lucas had run into his arms. Lucas, who was a very shy child, felt completely at ease with him. I slowly raised my head. "We can start slowly. As friends." Dr. Evans smiled broadly. I never imagined that the man who had seemed so serious at first could smile like that. "Yes, slowly. There's no rush." From that day on, my routine began to change slightly. Dr. Evans started coming on weekends to help me at the coffee shop. He would wash dishes or wipe down tables. He also played with Lucas. Lucas called him Uncle Daniel and adored him. One Sunday afternoon, the three of us went for a walk in a nearby park. Lucas walked in the middle, holding both of our hands. On the count of 3, we would lift him into the air like a swing. Lucas would laugh hysterically. Dr. Evans and I would laugh too. Sitting on a park bench, I thought, A short time ago, I would never have imagined a day like this could come. When my husband and my friend betrayed me, when I signed the divorce papers 9 months pregnant, I thought it was the end of the world. But now I realize that was just the prologue to my real life. My parents sometimes joined us too. One night, we all had dinner together at their house. Dr. Evans sat at the table my mother had prepared. My father, raising his glass of wine, said, "Our Emily has been through a lot, but I'm glad to see she's found a good person." "Dad, we're not dating, we're friends," I protested, blushing. My mother laughed. "And what kind of friend comes over every day to wash the dishes?" Dr. Evans smiled, a little embarrassed. Lucas, sitting on his lap, asked him for food. Daniel fed him with a spoon. Seeing that scene, I felt a great warmth in my chest. Betrayal, debt, divorce, tears. All of that had been part of the process that had made me the woman I am today. If I hadn't gone through those difficult times, I wouldn't have known how to appreciate the preciousness of this moment. One afternoon, I closed the coffee shop and stepped outside. The evening light illuminated the sign. Lucas was asleep on Dr. Evans' shoulder. I, with a cup of coffee in hand, stood beside him. Dr. Evans, with Lucas in his arms, said, "Lucas is getting heavier. He's grown so much." "Yes. He only weighed 7 pounds when he was born." I gently stroked Lucas's cheek. His face was peaceful. The letters of the coffee shop sign, which I had chosen myself, shone in the sunset light. This little coffee shop had been my new beginning. I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Now, the second act of my life truly begins." At 35, a single mother, divorced, owner of a small coffee shop. To some, it might seem like a humble life, but I knew that this was the happiest moment of my life. I had Lucas, my parents, and a trustworthy person by my side, and that was more than enough. In fact, it was more than I had ever dreamed of. That moment when I thought my world had collapsed was actually the doorway to my true life. The wound of betrayal was deep, but in its place grew a much stronger version of myself. Just like Emily, who found a new beginning where she thought it was the end, for anyone going through a difficult time today, a new chapter is surely waiting.